I was just told by a potential employer that I was required to get the COVID-19 vaccine before I report to work. He mentioned that he had just had the COVID-19 vaccine and that he had experienced side effects on the second dose. So I decided to do some research, and what I discovered I think you will find fascinating. So, this is how Google defines the immune response of the COVID vaccine. The spike protein is found on the surface of the virus that causes COVID 19. COVID 19 mRNA vaccines are given in the upper arm muscle. Once the instructions, mRNA, are inside your immune cells, the cells use them to make the protein piece, which I'm sure is saying the antigen antibody immune response. But you see, this is not like a normal vaccine. It is hybridizing your complete immune cell response. It's going into your immune cell, changing it, and making it into a hybrid cell. Whether that's good or bad, I don't know if they've done enough studies to warrant any kind of a claim. So I thought, where else have I heard about this kind of hybridized immune cell? And I thought, oh, yes, type 1 diabetes. They've discovered a hybridized immune cell which may trigger diabetes. 19, Nature published an article which cited a new study that showed there is a strange hybrid immune cell called the X cell that appears to be triggering type 1 diabetes. They call it a hybrid because this immune cell appears to be impossible to have occurred in nature. The X cell occurs in about 1 in 10,000 immune cells. So you have your T and your B immune cells or leukocytes, but every 10,000 cells, they are finding that people with type 1 diabetes have this hybrid, or should we say Frankenstein, immune cell called X. So, what does this have to do with the new vaccine for COVID 19? Well, COVID-19 vaccine could be characterized as producing a hybrid immune cell within your body because it changes, no, not your DNA, but it changes the immune cells in your body by encoding four new proteins on the cell, on your immune cell's outer wall. Hence, you have a hybrid cell. Is this going to be safe and effective? Well, only you can decide. But with all the autoimmune diseases occurring now, I think that people should start investigating and doing their own research. That this would be good. Could the vaccine change my DNA? An mRNA vaccine, first COVID-19 vaccine to be granted emergency use, emergency is the key, by the FDA, cannot change your DNA. No, it can change all your immune cells because it goes into the immune cell. These vaccines deliver mRNA coated lipid into your cell. Once inside, your body uses the instructions of this mRNA to make SARS-CoV spike proteins. The immune response that protects around 95% of the people vaccinated with either vaccine from developing COVID 19. They have no studies to support this claim. Contain this mRNA coating, and what this does, it forms a spike protein of the SARS-CoV. It encodes your cell with these spike proteins. I was just told by a potential employer that I was required to get the COVID-19 vaccine before I report to work. He mentioned that he had just had the COVID-19 vaccine and that he had experienced side effects on the second dose. So, as I ponder whether or not to get the vaccine, I decided to look up what those side effects are because you know what? The question is whether this vaccine will, number one, be safe, and number two, will do exactly what it claims to do. Well, I decided to look it up. February 6th, 2021, in Nature, a very well respected scientific journal. Which it's clear that corona vaccines are safe and effective. Okay, what is safe? It means it doesn't cause harm. Effective means it's going to do what its intended use it's meant to do. They call this warranty, promise it to be safe, and they promise it to be effective. How many people experience common side effects from COVID-19? Injection site pain, which many report on the first dose. You're going to have close to 75%. Everyone's going to have muscle pain. Muscle pain occurs when there's inflammation at the site. So the simple fact of putting in this vaccine is causing an immune response of pain or inflammation at the site where it's put. Not a good indication that it's safe. Okay, on the first dose, only 30% experience fatigue and 50% will experience it on the second dose. Look, it's almost 50-50, quarter to 50, so it's like they're stepping it up. And this is what this gentleman that I discussed a job with said. He got sick on the second dose. And when I said, oh my goodness, I've heard that happen, he says, well, it just indicates I've got a great immune system. What those long-term effects are going to be, who knows, because there's an immune response. You asked, we answered. The COVID vaccine's ingredients are public. Okay, so here's the two vaccines. I personally don't know which one would be safer. They all contain this mRNA coating. And what this does, it forms a spike protein of the SARS-CoV. It encodes your cell with these spike proteins. It's supposed to affect it so it targets specifically SARS-CoV. But what else are these going to target? I don't know. So this is going to code every one of your antibodies with these spike proteins. So are going to lock onto the antigen of the SARS-CoV, and they make little, like lock and key. So hopefully it will be effective. But again, they're seeing all sorts of different versions. So are they going to have to overload you with this mRNA coding every year with different codes? I mean, you're basically not going to be a human, a biological human. You're going to be a human that has been manipulated organically. Okay, now it does not contain fetal cells, blood product, COVID-19 virus cells, mercury, egg, latex stoppers, pork products, preservatives, and microchips. It does not contain any of these. That's nice to know. I'm not telling anybody not to get this vaccine. I just be aware that it will change your immune system, hopefully for the better. One of the issues of our information society is that there's just so much information. And if you want to know the truth about anything, you have to be an investigator and a researcher. One of the issues that I've been seeing is that how many males have developed diabetes. Mostly it's type 2 diabetes connected to, I believe, being overweight. I know that many of my friends who have type 2 diabetes say that they relieve a lot of their diabetic symptoms by getting off the gluten, or they go on that low yeast diet. Their symptoms minimize. But here's an interesting article that was written in September 12th of 2019. And as you know, diabetes 1 is a pandemic. And diabetes 1 is early childhood diabetes that really shortens men's and women's lives. But we're finding this mostly in men. Okay, here's the rogue immune cell X is a completely new type of cell. It could trigger type 1 diabetes. Now remember, this is the immune cell X, a new type of immune cell that has been newly discovered. And now they're believing that this has triggered this pandemic of type 1 diabetes in our boys. And I know, and girls, excuse me too, and our girls, but this type 1 is a very virulent type of diabetes. And again, this has also been in the news lately because I guess their type 1 diabetic insulin is costing $2,000 a month in most people's cases. It's really draining the middle American population of all their savings, of all their free money to do anything with. They have no money to invest in because you're investing $2,000 a month in diabetic drugs. Well, here's this type X immune cell that they believe is triggering this. So maybe we should start working on an X suppressant. But let's go through here. Scientists have discovered mysterious populations previously unknown cell lurking in the body, according to a study. The enigmatic new cell called immune cell X, a changeling that can act as two other cell types. This rogue hybrid cell may trigger type 1 diabetes. So the question is, where did this type X hybrid cell come from? Well, there can be a lot of theories, but perhaps it came from some of these hybrid cell diabetic drugs, or I mean, there's many things in the environment. There's toxins in the environment. They are spraying. I know in California, Central Valley, just toxins galore in the soil because of the chemical drain off, the oil drain off. It's environmental, but it also could be being triggered by other factors besides just environment. Scientists have long believed these hybrid cells could not exist. Okay, so they believed they were impossible. The population of these cells is likely tiny, perhaps less than 7 out of every 10,000 white blood cells. So they're hard to trace, said a researcher. The immune cascade. Normally, white blood cells patrol the body, swallowing up foreign invaders as bacteria and virus, digesting them. Two types of white blood cells, B and T cells, are incredibly powerful tools in the immune system arsenal. B cells crank out B cells crank out billions of individualized antibodies which uniquely bind specific antigens. Key to these processes are proteins found in the outer surface of the immune cells called the major histocompatibility complex, MHC, which is where the antigen locks. B cells bind the antigen to the MHC, and the receptors on the T cells, and they bind with the MHC antigen complex and activate the T cells. The new study published in the journal, Hamad and his colleagues found that a potential culprit, using blood samples from both healthy people and those with diabetes, as well as computer simulations of B and T cells, the team found that the existence of X cell that has receptors of both B and T cells. The X cells seem to be ultra powerful driver of the autoimmunity. The X cells churn out antibodies that strongly activate T cells in samples. And this is what they've been finding, puts the immune system into hyper vigilant state, hyperactivity, so that not only immune system, an immune system that attacks the body, the organism itself. I'll leave a link to this article. You can read through it, but this is interesting that diabetes now can be tracked to perhaps this rogue X cell or immune antibody, which should give everyone pause about what's going on in our pro-vaccine communities. Is this one of the very serious unintended consequences of fiddling with the immune system? Is most chronic immune diseases these days connected to the super duper immune system that is being programmed by all the various chemicals, toxins, and yes, anything we put in our body, including food. And that is why people are having problems with gluten. They never had problems with gluten until, so yes, there is some truth to cleaning up the environment and getting rid of all these chemical toxins in our environment. There is a study that shows chemical toxins lead to autism. Smog in cities can lead to autism. So we need a multifaceted program to reduce all these toxins, allergens, and viruses, bacteria, everything within our society, because the medical health of the population is under extreme assault. mRNA COVID-19 vaccines. The spike protein is found on the surface of the virus that causes COVID-19. COVID-19 mRNA vaccines are given in the upper arm muscle. Once the instructions of the mRNA are inside the immune cell, the cells use them to make the protein piece. This mRNA is going to be inside your immune system cells. So what is this mRNA going to do to your immune system cells? Well, they're telling us it's going to counteract the COVID virus, but what else is it going to counteract? Such as like the X rogue antibody. Okay, an mRNA vaccine, the first COVID-19 vaccine to be granted emergency use authorization by the FDA, cannot change your DNA. No, but it does change your immune cells, such as the X antibody that they say may be triggering diabetes. Safe and effective. I'm going to show you that that's counterintuitive to what the COVID-19 does. Okay, so